All right, today we are looking at lesson 50. We're looking at quadratic equations, and then we're going to look at completing the square. Have y'all ever heard of completing the square? Okay.
I'm starting to like this cosine tangent stuff because I'm starting to get the hang of it.
Good. Good. Okay. Definition of a quadratic equation has one variable, and it's a polynomial where the highest power is degree 2. Your highest exponent is a 2. So x squared is going to be your biggest exponent term. These are all three examples of quadratic equations. Huh? It's not a sentence. It's the definition of quadratic. It's the definition of it. What is a quadratic equation? It is a quadratic equation in one variable, and it is a polynomial equation of 2 degrees, or of degree 2. Saxon likes to word things differently. Why is the first equation quadratic? That's the highest power. It always has to have an x squared or a p squared if it's all in terms of p. The second one, why is it a quadratic equation? Because it has an x squared. What about the last one? Would this be a quadratic? Why not? It doesn't have an x squared. You may or may not be able to factor those, but they are still quadratic equations. Does that make sense? Yeah, this would be linear.
Well, how do you know?
It only has one variable, and there's no, the exponent is a 1.
That's what we normally do, right?
Yeah, this would be a vertical line. Okay. You've done these before, right? Are you like that in English and in science?
Science, she does like science.
But not English? You still like English?
I like it.
Or are you talking about Miranda?
She's like that English, but not as bad.
Like, I like vocabulary. I like vocabulary.
Yeah, like she's the first one.
What would you do for this one? And so what would x equal? Does that make sense? We've done those, right? Okay. We've done these. Yep. Do what? That's fine. But the plus or minus goes right in front of the square root. You could write this one as plus or minus the square root of 3 plus 2, or either one. It doesn't matter the order.
I think I like the
Any questions on these? Okay. So, can you factor this one? What multiplies give you 4? 1 and 4? And what else? Do those add up to 6? Not at all. So, if you cannot factor it, you're going to use completing the square. Okay? So these are the steps. I'll let you write them down first, and then we'll actually do a problem. You will probably want to refer back to these quite often. So if you need to make notes whenever we actually work a problem, that's fine. They take a little bit of time when you're first learning how to do them. Oh, whoops. I didn't realize coefficient was down there. First, we want to move our whole number to the right. What is our whole number? The -4. You want to keep your two x terms, the x squared and the x, together and put the number on the other side. There is a reason I left space there. You want to leave some space there. This is our x term, correct? So we are going to take half of it. What do you get? Does that make sense? And then step 3 says take that number and square it, which is what? Does that make sense? And then we're going to add it to both sides of the equation. If you add something to both sides of an equation, have you changed the value? It's still the same equation. Does that make sense? Okay, we want to factor this, and it's going to actually factor as a perfect square. How will this factor? Does that make sense? When it says perfect square, it means the same thing twice, basically. Any questions so far? Some of y'all have already been doing this. Instead of x plus 3 times x plus 3, what could I write? Does that look familiar to other things that we've done? Looks just like that. Well, not just like that, but looks like that, right? Go back. So do you know how to do it once you get here? See if you can get it. Yeah, the stuff that you're like, why are we doing this? Like, we're going to add to it eventually. So what would you do next? So you have x plus 3 equals what? Plus or minus square root of 13. And then what? And that is your answer. Does that make sense? So what you have to learn to do is basically that part. Because once you get it into something squared equals a number, you know what to do. Any questions so far?
It's not hard.
It won't always be a 3. No, there will be fractions. Trying to think if they wait to introduce fractions in another lesson. I mean, I know this one isn't a fraction. Wait, no, it's not. No, but some of them will be fractions. Actually, this one will be a fraction. But some of them will be, some of them won't.
But how can a perfect square?
We'll go over that. It'll still factor. It's just not how you normally think of factoring. Okay, so is this the correct form that we need it in? What do we need it to be? Okay. We want the 9x to be over here. Does that make sense? Yeah. I didn't need to move the 7 because I want it on an opposite side from the 2 x's. If you need to make it all equal to 0 and then move the 7, you can do that. Does that make sense? Like if you need to put it all on one side before you figure out where they need to go, that's fine. So now what do we do? What is half of 9? Leave it as a fraction. Does that make sense? Yeah, you want to leave these as fractions. They'll be a lot easier to leave as fractions. It's just take half of this coefficient. -9, half of it is -9/2. And then you square it. What is -9 squared? 81. What is 2 squared? That's how you square a fraction. Just square each term individually. Does that make sense? No, you drop the x off. Yeah, just looking at the number. Yep. You add it to both sides. Yeah, always add it. Well, when you square it, the negative goes away. So either way, it's going to always be a positive. Any questions so far? Okay. We have to factor this.
Oh.
You know it's going to be x. What? What is -9/2 plus -9/2? Which is what? Which is -9. What is -9/2 times -9/2? 81/4. Where else do you see -9/2 other than over here? You took -9 and you took half of it, right? That number is always going to go here. Let's go back real quick. Half of 6 was what? And then we put 3 here. Does that make sense? Oh, this one was easy to factor though, so you didn't need to know that. But this number that you take, once you take half of it, it's going to go back right here. So when you look at it, you're like, I don't know how to factor that. X minus that term divided by 2. Because it factors into x minus 9/2 times x minus 9/2. They'll always. Oh, I haven't finished it. It'll always factor into x minus this number times x minus the same number. Okay, so equals what?
Always negative
81 minus 28. Make the negative 7 negative 28 over 4 plus 81 over 4. Does that make sense? Oh. Any questions to get to this step? None? Okay. What do you do next? You agree so far? And then what do you do? Add 9/2. Can I leave my radical with a fraction? Do I know the square root of 53? Do I know the square root of 4? So instead of having the square root of 53 over the square root of 4, what is it? Does that make sense? So this is your actual answer. Does that make sense? Any questions? Do y'all want to try one by yourself? Yeah? Okay. I better not make one up. Any questions on how I got the 1? You agree? And so what do you get for your actual answer? Any questions on these? Obviously they're easier without the fractions, but they're going to have some that have fractions. Any questions on these? Okay.